Welcome to 3 Steps. This is Philippe. Philippe, how would you like to introduce yourself?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm a man who knows what he's doing, but the truth is that a man who knows what he's doing also knows that there's a lot of things he doesn't know.
Right.
I've been doing a lot of practice around connecting well, around showing up well, around touching well.
Yeah.
And around really trying to understand what's happening on the other side.
Yeah.
Especially when I've got all my filters and I've got all my sense of what's going on over there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to subtract myself from that.
Yeah.
And really trying to get curious.
Yeah.
You can call me a coach. You can call me a teacher. I host men's group such as the Remember Brotherhood Journey. Mm-hmm. We just did one in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
I also organize a lot of trainings for the ISTA organization,
Right.
Organism as they like to call it.
What is ISTA exactly?
ISTA stands for International School of Temple Arts,
Mm-hmm.
and what they do is they create trainings all over the world. In many different countries, 43 countries, I believe, 35 trainings a year. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they teach people about sovereignty.
Oh.
About the sovereignty around sexuality, around sensuality, around emotional, basically being able to own your own reactions.
Ah.
So to me, that's a piece of ownership that's really important, because everything that happens to us creates a reaction.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to say, oh, it's your fault.
Ah.
And going back to what I was just starting to say, I know why you did it.
Yeah.
So this is about like doing it the other way. I'm having a reaction. Mm-hmm. You did something. Mm-hmm. I'm interpreting it a certain way. So I'm going to own my emotions and I'm going to own my reaction. And then we're going to try to meet somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
in connection and in intimacy,
Yeah.
in order to really truly understand each other.
Awesome. I really appreciate it.
So
That's a whole lot right there.
yeah, and that's my jam, and it's also my work, my personal work.
Yeah.
Like, often they say we teach the things we most need to learn.
Right.
So way back when in high school, I was a nerd.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had the first personal computer. I was reading a lot of fantasy novels. I was reading science fiction,
Yeah.
and I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great, but it wasn't getting me the girls.
Yeah. Totally.
And so somewhere in the process of going from high school to college and post-college, I decided to move to California, reinvent myself. And I realized, well, what is it that's of interest to me? What is it that's missing in my life?
Right.
And I realized that women were
Yeah.
missing from my life.
Yeah.
And I was really, really wanting to understand what was going on with them. And so I had a long-term girlfriend, and then that broke down, and I heard the word polyamory, and I decided I wanted to really understand how I was interacting with women and what was working, what was not working. So I started to really dive into my own sense of skills and in the qualities that I needed to show up for that, and also back to what's going on for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. What does masculinity mean to you?
That's a great question. So I often hear, and especially in my communities of sort of neo-pagan tribal hippies, this sort of like masculine and feminine energies, right? So the definition I'm going to give you, I sort of created for myself before I even heard of David Data.
Yeah.
So David Data is fairly well known about playing around with these topics. Mm-hmm. So my definition of what masculinity is, it's a set of expressions. It's a mode of expression. So imagine you've got a piano or an instrument, and there's like all the notes on the left, and all it would be, say, masculine, and all the notes on the right would be feminine. Or maybe all the black notes are masculine and the white notes are feminine.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
The point is that there are different notes. Mm-hmm. And so as I learn inside of myself what's masculine and what's feminine, what qualifies, then I get to explore those modes of expressions, those types of expressions.
Yeah.
And so qualities, modes of expression. So what's masculinity, to answer your question, would be modes of expression that qualify as masculine. And I would state that in our culture, what qualifies as masculine is a very specific set of traits or set of types of expression. Right. And I think the psychology Association came up with this whole report recently that said masculinity, the qualities of masculinity are toxic. And I disagree with that. It's not those qualities that are toxic. It's when those qualities are rigid, or what they call what qualifies as the man box. Like you have to be within those types of expression, otherwise you're not a man.
Right.
Or it has to be, or the expression has to look a certain way. Like for example, stoicity. Right? That's a type of masculine mode of expression.
Yeah, being very stoic. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, but that doesn't mean that if it's done overly done, then that can be toxic. Or if that's the only thing you do.
Yeah.
Just like if you only eat carrots.
Right.
Or if you only eat tomatoes, like eventually that's actually not going to be good for you.
No behavioral flexibility.
So masculinity is a set of modes of expression or traits that relate to the scripts of manhood. And actually, I'm realizing that I didn't really answer the question about what is masculinity to me.
Okay. Yeah.
But,
why don't you really answer it then?
Well, it's interesting because my dad, in his own way, or in the ways that I associate him to be a masculine person, he was the kind of person who's very, very loving, fairly stoic, not very emotional unless pushed enough. The emotions would come out. But without that, he was not very emotional. But if I pushed him enough, he would start to tear up. And when I got married to my wife, he was definitely crying. And more lately, over the last 15, 20 years, and since I actually told him that I really enjoy him saying I love you, he started saying it more. But it always feels a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, right? Like he doesn't have practice in it.
Right.
Yeah.
But maybe not speaking it, but in terms of love languages, in doing as acts of service, he does it wonderfully. And he can push it to a level that actually starts to look like criticism.
Yeah.
And until I realized that his criticism was an expression of love, I always took it as I did something wrong. And it took me a while before I realized what that was.
Right.
So my dad, so the way I learned it from my dad, because I never hung out with the boys in school.
Yeah.
So I have my dad and I have my friends, my few friends to sort of like learn from. And so yeah, my dad likes to fix things. He likes to figure things out. So to me, these are all masculine traits.
Right.
And I would say, look at my mom, I would look at feminine traits. Even though it's not necessary in my definition for a woman to express mostly feminine traits and for men to express mostly masculine traits. And David Data says about the same thing. He says everybody's got a mix.
Yep.
And sometimes the mix is as we expect it, and sometimes the mix isn't. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah. What does it mean to be a man?
It's an interesting question because it's not a question that I ask myself very often. Parts of it.
A lot of guys, this is their reaction. It's like, I don't think about this anymore.
Yeah. But it's also because neither of my parents ever said, be a man.
Yeah.
Or this is how you be a man. They never showed up. They never told us this is how you be a man, or this, or you should be, or what was that? I'm trying to think. I mean, there are things that
man up or
man up, exactly. Yeah, some version of that. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Never heard that from my parents.
Yeah.
Now I was born in Canada. Maybe that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Or maybe it makes a difference because of the families that both my parents. My mom was raised by my grandma, and her dad died when my mom was 5, and my dad's parents. They died just a few years ago, and there was no sense of this is how you be a man, this is how you not be a man. There's no man up. There's none of that, even in French.
Yeah,
because we grew up speaking French.
Yeah,
and so that question doesn't come up because I've never had to ask myself, am I a man or am I not a man?
Right.
Right. So having said that, if you asking me now, I would say, I feel both pulled in the direction of what is the cultural definition or what's the culturally accepted, ever transforming, evolving version of what a man's supposed to look like within my communities, within the American culture. I don't really recall what that was supposed to look like in Canada. I moved when I was 26. and I don't recall there being much of a pull in the direction of this is how a man is supposed to look like.
Right.
Now, of course, I could look at my friends and and movies and things like that, but it's mostly in the last 10 or 15 years being in America that I felt that more strongly, and I felt having to. I felt like having to match a certain script, a set of scripts, or a certain set of qualities. So there's that, and beyond that, or maybe before that, I have this sense of I am the man that I want to be. Like I am just evolving my own version.
Right.
And often I look at men in America and how they're showing up. And they're doing it because of their own things pulling them in different directions. And I feel like I have a fairly strong sense of what it looks like for me, created by me.
Yeah.
And so, what is it like to be a man? Well, what does it mean? What does it mean? Sorry.
What does it mean?
It means. And that also relates to the men's circle that I was a part of, called the men's circle, which I believe you started, which is amazing.
Part of original
so it's kind of full circle. Yeah. So something about being on purpose.
Yeah.
It means someone who's on purpose, someone who honors his word.
Yeah.
Or who is his word. Mm-hmm. Someone who's willing to try to understand.
Yeah.
Someone who's willing to try to make it work. I got that from my parents, who had difficulties during their marriage, but always found a way to make it work. Mm. And it's hard to tell, like, how far do you take that?
Yeah.
Like, making it work could mean, spinning your wheels and spending all your energy to try to make something work that's not meant to work.
Right.
So how the heck do you know when it's time to let it go?
Right.
Unfortunately, I have very little experiences of breakup in my life. And so my disadvantage is that I don't necessarily know when to stop. And so for me, what it means to be a man is to keep at it no matter what.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always work. It can be really great for going the extra mile. But what if the extra mile will kill you?
Yeah.
So that's tricky.
That is tricky.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and what does it mean to be a man is to show up for his partner or his lovers in a way that's complementary, which can look like masculine traits, but sometimes it could look like showing up with my feminine, to my inner feminine, the part of me that is that has more feminine traits, because maybe the woman that I'm with is expressing masculine traits, and she needs someone to counterbalance her.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily mean masculine traits. It could mean a mix of the two. And I really do feel like there's a range of both.
Thank you, man, so much. This has been really awesome.
That was so good.
Yeah. All right, guys. Take care. See you.
See you.